relying
Good afternoon. Welcome to this meeting of the Northern Planning Committee. I'm Councillor Paul Wynne, Chairman of this committee. We are not expecting a fire drill today. In the event of an alarm sounding, please leave the building and gather at the front of the building. I'm obliged to inform you that this is a meeting is being live streamed and recorded. I also ask you to please ensure that mobile phones are switched off and ensure the volume on your laptop is muted. To ensure the members of this committee and points raised by the public speakers are properly heard, I must advise you that I will not tolerate any disruptive behaviour. This is a meeting held in public, not a public meeting. And if such behaviour takes place and persists, I will adjourn the meeting. Members should ensure that they are present throughout the meeting, and you cannot vote on any item if you have not heard all the debate. Can members and officers introduce themselves each time before they speak, so those listening know who is speaking? I shall now ask members of the committee and officers to introduce themselves. So, Edward, can you start off, please?
Yeah. Edward Towers, Councillor for Wem Division, Wem Brooks.
Councillor Mike Isherwood, Councillor for Oswestry West.
Councillor Mark Jones, Vice Chairman and Member for Gaboyne, Salatin and Western Red.
Ted Clark, Councillor for Bayston Hill.
Councillor Jeff Alnody, Councillor for Ellesmere Urban.
Councillor Gary Burton, Councillor for Bagley.
Councillor Joyce Farrell, Councillor for St Oswald.
It's Balmain.
Nat Green, Councillor for Quarry and Coton Hill.
Mark, if you could kick off the officers, please.
Mark Perry, Senior Planning Officer.
Philip Molyneux, Planning Manager. Idris Iqbal, Solicitor.
Emily Marshall, Committee Officer.
Right, let's go straight on to the agenda. Apologies for absence. We have received apologies, and it's gone somewhere. Where is it? Here we go. Apologies from David Vlasmere, Alex Wagner, Nat Green is standing in for Alex Wagner. I also like to welcome him back on this committee. Apparently he's going to be a new member of the committee. Welcome him back. Good input there. Thank you very much. Yeah, item 2. Have we got anybody else? No, that's it, isn't it? Yeah, item 2, to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on 16th of August 2022, circulated with the agenda.
Happy to move.
Thank you. Moved, seconded. Thank you, Gary. Public questions, none received. Disclosure of pecuniary interests. Mark?
Yeah, on item 5, I am the local councillor, so I will speak on it and then I will move to the back of the room.
Thank you, Mark. Anybody else?
No, Chair. Yes.
Oh, sorry, Vince.
Item 6, I am the councillor for the area of that application.
I think he's speaking.
I will be speaking briefly and then I'll move to the back of the room.
Thank you, Vince. Right, item 5 is Land North Greenfields Land. I won't say the rest because I can't pronounce it. So, presenting, Mark, you're presenting this?
Yeah.
Thank you.
This application is for the creation of a solar park on a 1.7 hectare parcel of agricultural land. It involves the installation of 3,024 panels, installation of substations, battery storage units, CCTV units, and the erection of a 2 metre high deer fence around the perimeter, and the creation of a stone access track. This is a resubmission of an application that was previously refused. And in this resubmission, the applicant has reduced the number of panels on the site and has also changed the angle of the panels, which has reduced their height. Members will have seen from the site visit that the site is in an elevated position and on undulating land that forms part of a larger field defined by native hedgerows. The ground is used for grazing and it's a grade 4 agricultural land classification, meaning that it is of poor quality, mainly suited to grass for grazing. The site is therefore not the best and most versatile agricultural land. The solar panels themselves would be arranged in 14 rows with the panels angled at 25 degrees. At their tallest, they would measure 2.4 metres above the ground, sloping down to 0.8 metres. The panels would be expected to have a lifespan of 40 years, after which they would be removed and the land reinstated. A peak of 1.24 megawatts would be generated by the panels, which could meet the demand of around 322 households, with the anticipated CO2 emission saving of about 291 tonnes. The scheme includes some biodiversity enhancements, which includes the planting of a 165-metre stretch of hedgerow and the planting of 5 specimen trees to the north of the panels. As detailed in the report and pointed out to members this morning, the application site sits around 800 metres to the west of 2 scheduled sections of Offers Dyke, which run across the opposite side of the valley. Its scheduled status means that it is of the highest significance. Views of the dyke are visible from the application site and vice versa. The development would introduce an industrial type of development into the wider setting of the dyke. A landscape and visual impact assessment has been submitted, and this was assessed by the council's landscape consultant. The consultant considered that 10 of the 12 landscape receptors would experience neutral effect from the solar park and that 2 would have an adverse effect. The adverse effects would be limited to areas within the vicinity of the site. The LVIA submitted does only take into account the publicly accessible viewpoints. A heritage impact assessment has also been submitted, and is considered the impact of the development on the setting of Offers Dyke, and this is regardless of whether the heritage asset is on private or publicly accessible land. The heritage impact has been assessed, and it is considered by officers and Historic England that the solar park would have a less than substantial harm to the setting of the dyke. Paragraph 199 of the NPPF requires that when considering the impact of a development on the significance of a designated heritage asset, great weight should be given to the asset's conservation, and the more important the asset, the greater the weight should be. In this instance, the scheduled status of the dyke means that it is of the highest significance. Paragraph 200 of the NPPF requires any harm to the significance of a designated heritage asset, which includes any development within its setting, to have a clear and convincing justification. Where the development would result in a less than substantial harm, as is the case here, paragraph 202 of the NPPF requires that the harm identified must be weighed against the public benefits. In this case, the clear benefits of the scheme are the provision of a sustainable renewable energy source. The proposed solar park is on grade 4 agricultural land, that is not the best and most versatile, and the scheme would contribute towards one of the strategic objectives of the core strategy by promoting a low carbon Shropshire and the government's target of being carbon net zero by 2050. In carrying out the planning balance as required by the NPPF, it is considered that the public benefits of the proposal do not outweigh the harm to the setting of Offers Dyke, as expressed in the objections made by Historic England and the Council's Historic Environment Manager. Other items that members just need to be aware of is that the Council's ecologist is satisfied that there will be no impact on protected species, and then that the new hedge will provide some ecological benefits. And with regard to the construction and management traffic plan has been provided, which details the route that delivery vehicles would use to the site, and that this would be by 26-tonne fixed axle vehicles, which are deemed appropriate for the narrow rural lanes. The Highways Officer has no objections. On balance, officers recommend that the application is refused for the reasons that are set out in the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mark. We have 2 public speakers, starting off the local member, Councillor Mark Jones. Mark, you have 5 minutes. We'll just use the time.
Just to save paper being very green, I've put it on laptop.
Well, the rest of us.
It's got 2, apart from Ted.
3 minutes gone already.
Yes,
It won't work.
So much for it in that shot.
Going to put your mic on that, Mark, please.
I could do without, don't I? Thank you. First of all, I want to point the members to page 9, at the bottom of page 9, section 4.3. And if you read it, it says the proposed development will be partially visible from the middle distance when looking towards Wales from a short sections of Oswestry crossing Baker's Hill. The section in questions are not accessible to the public and cross privately owned land. So basically you cannot see this site from the Oswestry as it was originally. They moved it up the road. I also wanted to point out sections 6, 5, 15. Scrolling down slowly. Which reads, paragraph 202 of the NPPF states that where a development proposal will lead to less than substantial harm to the significance of a designated heritage asset, this harm should be weighed against the public benefits of the proposal, including where appropriate, securing its optimum viable usage. So the planning officer talks about balance. I think the balance, as we talked in training, the balance is very much in favour of this happening. The public benefits far outweigh the fact that you cannot actually see the site from Oswestry. And it's a great family farm. They need the money to sustain the farm. They've been there 4 generations, and we hope they'll be there for 5 and 6. And so I very much commend that we accept to pass this planning and not refuse it. I think the benefits well outweigh what the planning officer says on this one. So that's my words. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. You did take 5 minutes. So we also have another speaker for is Cliff Harris. Would you like to come forward, please? Oh, Cliff, you have 3 minutes. Would you like a 30-second warning?
Yeah.
Okay. And we start the clock when you start speaking, okay?
Okay, I'm Cliff Harris. I'm basically the owner of the company hoping to build the farm. I've got 3 sort of very minor points I'd like to sort of draw attention to. The first one is that this is a really small solar farm. If you look at ones that are kind of in the news and mostly discussed, that are going through planning now, they tend to be about 50 megawatts or 49.9 megawatts for some technical reason. And I know there's another one in the local area currently in planning that is, I think, 12 megawatts. And this is 1.25 megawatts. So it's incredibly small. I would not be surprised to find out that it's the smallest one in the country currently in planning. And I think that needs to be taken into account. The second thing I'd like to point out is that it will be installed with what are called ground screws. So I think, unless you're intimately involved in these things, you would assume perhaps that there's a lot of concrete involved and that the panels are kind of like concreted in. They're just screwed in. It's 4-foot screws, and that's good enough. So at the end of the kind of lifetime of the project, it can all be taken away, and the land should be exactly as it was. And in fact, our kind of lease with the landholder already specifies that at the end of the project, everything is taken away and it is restored. I'm very nervous. I've never spoken on one of these things. Probably the third thing I'd like to kind of mention, because I know it is unusual, is that this is basically a husband and wife business. It's me and my wife, as a kind of like retirement project, have decided to try and do this. I'm a computer programmer. This is not what I normally do. And with a lot of large like solar farms and wind farms and everything, a company tries to get planning permission. When they get it, they then sell that to a developer. The developer builds it. They then sell that to a pension fund or a hedge fund or some international company that will then run it. Our intention, if we get permission, is to build the farm and to run it for the full 25 years.
30 seconds.
So our intention is to keep this as a British family business for as long as possible. And I'm sure everyone knows, but I'd just like to draw attention to, we have at the same time climate emergency, energy price emergency, and cost of living crisis. So I don't think there could be a better time to put forward a proposal like this.
Thank you very much, Cliff. Could you just pop your mic off, please, the right hand button. Thank you. Right, before we on to the floor, I just want to make it clear to everybody, this land is grazed by sheep. It'll be grazed by sheep again, just the same as it is now. So they'll still be producing food off the same patch of ground. Okay, I've got Vince, who's indicated to speak first.
Thanks, Chair. Yes, I joined you on the site visit this morning. I found the officer's report quite interesting, and it seems to be based around, I guess, the reason for refusal is the view of the NWPF, that of Historic England and our own officer. I have to say it's not an opinion that I agree with. I do think that this development isn't going to harm the designated heritage asset. I think 6.512, any harm or loss of significance, well, basically what they're saying is that it shouldn't detract from its environment and its setting that it sits in. As we've already heard from the local member, the piece of Oswestry Park path that you can see is actually close to the public. It's on private land and it's close to the public. Where a development proposal will lead to less substantial harm to the significance of the designated heritage, this harm should be weighed against the public benefits of the proposed, including where appropriate, securing its optimum viable use. Well, this is great for agricultural land, as you pointed out, so where again the sheep are still going to eat there. I think we're almost getting ahead of ourselves. I mean, there may be a time, hopefully, in this country in the not too far distant future, where we will be looking at solar farms and wind turbines or whatever it is in the form of green energy, where we can be a bit picky about where we put these things. That time is not yet here. So I think we have a duty to approve plans like this, whether they be big or small. In this instance, we've heard that it's a relatively small one, because every bit counts towards securing a sustainable future. So I'm actually going to recommend that we don't go with the officer's recommendation, that we move for approval. I think it's to the credit of the gentleman who's just spoken, that they've listened to what officer said on the previous refusal. I think they've done their best to mitigate what the issues were. We saw the farmer this morning. As the local member said, it's a family farm that's been there for 4 generations and will probably remain within the family for the time to come. But remember that our farmers are the guardians of our countryside, and if they're happy to do this, then I see no reason why we shouldn't allow this. So I'm going to move that we allow this. The permission is granted. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Vince. Gary?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple of points of clarification. The officer mentioned that Oswestry was 800 metres away from this site. Well, unless my visual interpretation of 800 metres has gone askew, if it was on a hill, in my opinion, a good half a mile away. The second point you raised was that the angle of the solar farms will be changed to 25 degrees to give a 2.4 metre height. So if the solar panel was at its full maximum height, what height would that be, please?
It would be 2.4, yeah, so the angle.
At 25 degrees, it goes up.
Because they sit on a framework.
Right.
So yeah, kind of the lower edge is 0.8 metres above ground, and it slopes up from there.
Am I right in assuming though, if we set them slightly higher, the sheep could carry on grazing the land while the panels were there?
Yeah, because they're on raised up on the tables. Sheep can.
It's a stop the sheep chewing the wire.
Right. Okay.
There you can see on the image there how much they're sort of elevated up.
Okay. So just my point though about the distance to Oswestry, and the fact that its Oswestry is 88 miles long, but the Oswestry route to look at it is 177 miles long. of which that whole stretch through Oswestry, the solar panels aren't in view anywhere along the public stretches.
No, the actual footpath is, as we were looking at it this morning, was actually sort of slightly over the brown hill, actually follows the road along the top of that hill.
In that case, I'd like to second Councillor Hunt's
Thank you, Gary.
proposal.
We still have some more speakers yet. Mike.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I was going to second Councillor Hunt as well, but Gary's beat me to it. But yeah, I fully agree with what Councillor Hunt, Councillor Jones and our public speaker have already said. I think everyone here appreciates the importance of ancient monuments and our heritage, but you know, Offa's Dyke is long. It's not the only place that we can see it from, and it's been there for centuries and will be there for centuries to come. So I think in that context, this solar farm is essentially a temporary structure. It won't be there forever. People will get used to it, it'll blend into its surroundings, will have a useful life and then be dismantled. Because we are living through the very early stages of climate breakdown, we need to do everything we can to develop sources of energy which are renewable, sustainable, and, as we're now understanding, inexpensive and immune as much as possible to the effects of geopolitical crises. So I appreciate that in terms of policy, it could be argued that this fails the test and should be refused. But in my opinion, that interpretation is wrong. And if that's a correct interpretation, then the policies are wrong, out of date, and we've got it backwards. The greater weight ought to be given to avoiding catastrophic climate change, not the temporary, relatively minor effects on a view and the interpretation of a monument. So we must urgently get our priorities straight, because preserving a habitable planet has to come first. Landscape can be restored. So I'm fully in favour of Councillor Hunt's proposal.
Thank you, Mike. Nat?
Thank you. I'll keep it brief because I'm very much supporting what everyone else has already said. And simply reading through the officer's report, I didn't go on the site visit, but I know Offa's Dyke very well. Reading through the officer's report, it's quite clear that, you know, in and of itself, it is correct within the law as I understand it. But reading the comments from Historic England, it almost feels like we're hearing the words of peacetime when we're actually at war. This is like 1936, when in fact we're in 1940. And we have a crisis on us, we have a world crisis on us. And this does seem like the words from a bygone age. And I fully support everything that's been said. And I think under these circumstances, we have to support anything that can give us some sustainable energy. And we owe it to future generations that we do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Nat. Joyce?
Thank you. I wholeheartedly agree with every single speaker so far, but I would like to say that I feel that our planning officer is between a rock and a hard place, because national policy and also our officer's reports meant you had no choice but to put refusal on this application. But on balance, like everybody else, I totally support this. We do need green energy. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Joyce. Just one point before I go to you, Mark. I know a house in Trevonham, for instance, where Offa's Dyke runs to the bottom of the garden. The house is 22 years old, and on the other side of the dyke, they've built some more houses. Recently, well, I say recently, 10, 12 years ago, I'm thinking, what on earth are we talking about? But there you go, I'm handing over to you now, Mark.
Yeah, knock them down.
Yeah, I take your point entirely.
Is there any more members
No,
to speak to this application?
No.
Right, okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. We hear what you're saying. It's quite clear to me that members do not agree with the officer recommendation. I accept the application is finely balanced in that members are clearly in support of the application. However, we have to show regard to the consultee responses as set out in the report, especially from Historic England and our own archaeology. manager, who both object. We appreciate its use of poorer quality land. In fact, it's grade 4, and I appreciate the fact that the sheep can graze around it once it's installed, and that it can be easily dismantled, as pointed out by the agent during his presentation, and the ground returned back to its current form. I also acknowledge it's a relatively small solar farm in the wider scheme of things to our applications for these sort of applications presented today. However, there is an impact on Oswestry, as officers consider, and I guess this is in the wider landscape, the scale and size of it needs members, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but we have to show consideration to the NPPF in particular, and the paragraphs 199 to 202 in particular. And I'm going to read out paragraph 202 of the NPPF, and I'm assuming this is where you are coming from, and please confirm if you do, because we need to be careful here in that it's recorded as the reasons as to why you're going against the officer recommendation. And paragraph 202 states, where a development proposal will lead to less than substantial harm to the significance of a designated heritage asset, this harm should be weighed against the public benefits of the proposal, including where appropriate, securing its optimum viable use. Now, I understand it, despite your officer's advice, members are giving greater weight to that and concur with paragraph 202 of the NPPF.
I think Vince did say that.
Yeah. Right, well, as long as we're clear, we need to make minute that in the...
Yeah. Sorry if I didn't make it clear.
No, you did, but I just want to be sure that, like, you're not going to the officer's recommendation. We've got to now consider conditions as to why you supporting this. So, is there any conditions you feel strongly, or can I hand over to the officer here? We have made a list of suggested conditions in the event that you may go against the officer's recommendation.
Could you read those out, please, Philip?
Yeah. I'll hand over to Mark to do that, please.
Yeah, so first condition is that the development shall be begun within 3 years in all standard condition. Number 2 is that its development is carried out strictly in accordance with the approved plans and drawings. Number 3 is that all panels and other structures constructed in connection with the approved development shall be removed from the site within 40 years of the date of this permission, or when there are no longer needed for energy generation, whichever the sooner, and the site reinstated to its former use. The fourth condition it requires prior to energy generation commencing, the details of the hedgerow, including written specifications, planting sizes, numbers, densities.
Hedgerow mitigation.
Yeah, shall be submitted for approval. Number 5 is that a phased programme of archaeological work is submitted to and approved by the council. That's at the request of the council's archaeologist. And the 6th and final condition is that the proposed development is carried out in accordance with the construction traffic impact assessment that has been submitted.
Thank you, Mark. I'm just going back to Vince and to Gary, because they're the proposers and seconders. Yeah. Go on, Vince.
Yeah. No. So you talk about phased archaeological. What exactly do you mean by that? I mean, what are they expecting to find 800 metres away from Oswestry in a sheep field that's on weathered hilltops? Do you think? How much? What do you mean by phased? Are we talking about delaying it by 6 or 12 months, or are we just talking about? Because I have to be honest, I'm not entirely sure we need that particular one.
Well, we could amend it to during cutting out of what foundations are required anymore, because they did say they're not putting concrete in, they're screwing them in the ground. Is there a holding bay or parking area?
There is, yeah, which is
parked on it.
Yeah, so it'll be compacted gravel basically. So yeah, anything.
So what about any housing, permanent structure, rather than the panels?
I think there's two. They were talking about two container units, weren't they?
Yes,
container units and substations, yeah.
Presumably they would go on the hard standing that was there for traffic coming in. So
little pads, basically.
Can I suggest that we liaise with our archaeology manager, and can you, if it's okay with members, delegate it to us to think about an appropriately worded condition to reflect what you're saying?
Yes and no, because I'm sure, feeling a bit chased, the archaeological manager may want to jump through all sorts of hoops and everything else. I personally don't think that's necessary. Those hills are made of rock, so screwing into that, they're not going to be digging up great big holes and putting concrete in. So excavations on that are not going to be very deep, and they're not going to be showing anything.
This is just visual. Can you give us a couple of minutes, please?
Yeah, I'm just going to ask Joyce has indicated to speak. And then Edward, and then Mike.
I feel very strongly about 5 because the thing about digging, archaeologically, and I do wonder, forgive me for this, whether we're just keeping the archaeologists in a job because they can go digging away and spending time there.
No, we're not going that far.
I personally would take out 5 because I think all we're doing is hampering what is going to happen there and creating jobs. That's my opinion, and elongating the time it takes to put in these panels. Thank you.
Do you want to come back now, Philip?
Yes. No, okay, I understand what you're saying. It's looking at the archaeologist's response now, it's more to do with the visual. However, I was concerned, as he did object, we have to show consideration to what he's indicated. I acknowledge they're going to be screwed into ground, so it isn't that there's going to be massive foundations cut. So you want nothing whatsoever. You don't want us to
delete 5.
Yes.
We in this current wording, yes, but you don't want nothing at all.
Yeah.
No, there's nothing to protect.
Indeed, it's you and you, not me, isn't it?
Right, I've got 2 more speakers. Edward.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I find myself in a surprising position here. I spent most of my time trying to say why officers should be ignored, and this time I'm thinking, I thought I was going to accept this one. This seemed to be logical, but I do find myself in agreement with all that's been said, actually, and involving my climate change myself, involving in the local groups. My point is this: with regard to these appendices or whatever, does anything need to be said about this? Has been great weight was paid by our speaker on the fact this is a small project. Does anything need? Is there likelihood that this small project could be extended in the future, and therefore something needs to be said about making sure that it stays at this size? Because obviously this is something that might grow in time to come, and that might be more. And whereas now we can wear it, and I would support that, this might become a bigger thing later on.
They'd have to come back for permission.
Yeah, exactly.
Again, so
We're only looking at what we're seeing today. Well, Mike wants to say a word, so Mike.
Just very briefly on the archaeology thing, I agree that it's probably best to remove that altogether, but just a thought that occurred to me was rather than physical digging up archaeology, from years of watching Time Team, they used to do a sort of geophys survey with things that could just sense and build a picture of what was underground. Would that be an alternative?
That is where I was leaning towards. It's up to you. If you don't want it, to be fair, I wasn't aware until I said to you today that they're going to be screwed into ground. It's not that they're digging deep and bringing concrete in. So it's up to you. I'd have liked to have sought the archaeological manager's advice. He has to accept. You haven't gone with his recommendation. That's not you made the decision subject to the vote. That's fine. But he's here to work on your behalf and advise. We haven't consulted him on the likelihood of this being approved, so I can't say for certain. All I know is it is within the setting of a historic monument, i.e. the Offa's Dyke. The other thing I wanted to touch on before I forget, I would suggest, if you're mindful to approve as well, there's at the very least an informative put on any decision approval notice you might issue with regard to mud onto the public highway.
Yeah.
As we've had, yeah.
I think we're all happy with that, or proposer is.
As the proposer, and obviously the second may or may not have the same opinion, I'm happy to go with that. I have to say that it is a road quite literally to nowhere. It becomes a muddy track at the end, and the agricultural use of it will put its mud on there anyway. I just think we need to be a bit careful that we don't end up having farmers who work and check their livestock down there, sweeping the road half the day because they put a little bit of mud on it. I think if we're going to do that, I understand the necessity why officers feel it should be necessary, but I just think we need to go with a light touch on that because, as I say, it is a highway, but it's a highway that literally ends in a rutted dirt track. So it's not well used other than the people who live there. With regard to the archaeological thing, I think you're talking about like ground radar. I'm not sure what benefit there would be to that because it's just thin soil on top of rock. I don't think you find very much. I do think that there is a responsibility, and I'm sure that responsibility would be served that if while they're drilling a hole to put one of the pegs in, a bit of bone fragment or a piece of Viking gold turned up, I'm sure they'd let us know. But I think the likelihood of that happening is slightly less than zero.
How deep are the?
About 4 feet down.
Into bedrock.
Yeah, I hear you saying that as far as the mud goes on the road, that's a given anyway, because it's against the law to put mud on the road if you're a farm. I know.
But we do have a lot of problems with like if this is constructed during winter months and with football. I don't know what footpaths there are around there or walkers. We get a lot of complaints about mud and highway. It's something we do need to be conscious of. I'm aware Councillor Joyce Barrows had dreadful problems in her ward with this specific matter.
I'm sure. Will you have
additional choices, Ward, then?
Well, no. What I'm saying is, with construction on site, it's during construction on site, isn't it? With HGV movements, there is, by what I observed with you on site this morning, you do go onto a stone track, which in winter would get very muddy. For example, we took the minibus this morning down the track. You wouldn't have took that down if the ground was wet, would you?
No.
If officers feel it's necessary to put that in there for construction traffic, I'm happy for it to be included, but the wording must stipulate construction traffic.
Oh, we could.
Because the farmers go up and down there, they're the only people that access anything down there. It is used by some mountain bikers, it is used by some walkers. I've been down on a horse a few times.
I'm going to suggest we include that within the construction management plan, which is condition number 6.
Can we just
Happy to accept.
Gary, are you happy with that?
Happy with that.
Thank you. Okay, any more speak? Oh, right, Ted.
Just want to be difficult. The first thing that I have to pause briefly is just say congratulations to the horse that took Councillor Hunt anywhere. I think he must be a fairly strong one. No disrespect.
He died 3 years ago.
No, there you go. Immediately after he got off it. I understand where everybody's going, and I don't disagree. There are issues which I think supersede the one relating to it being a heritage site. But nonetheless, I do have a lot of sympathy with the comment from officers that at least we should get some archaeological, I don't know what to say, opinion, advice on how we can progress it. Hopefully nothing deep and lasting that's going to take months and months, but at least a bit of archaeological guidance before we proceed. I think that would.
Right, thank you, Ted. The proposal is that it's taken out completely at the moment.
Yeah.
And the proposal and second are happy with that. So I think we take it to the floor. Just one thing before, just Joyce's comment about the planning officer dealing with it. Awkward one, and I think that ought to be admitted as well. It's not easy. Thank you for that, Joyce.
Finely balanced is the word you need.
Finely balanced, if that's the right word, yeah. So everybody's happy, we can go to the vote with that? Okay, it'll be a recorded vote, So Idris, you'd like to take over, please?
Thank you, Chair. We have a proposal and a seconder to grant planning permission, not in accordance with the planning officer's recommendation. Please can you confirm whether you're voting for or against the proposal? Joyce Barrow?
When you say for the proposal, do you mean the recommendation or the?
The proposal on the floor.
Yeah, proposal on the floor.
Four.
Gary Burchett?
For.
Jeff Aldner?
For.
Ted Clark?
4.
Vincent?
4.
Mike Isherwood?
For.
Edward Towers?
For.
Nat Green?
4.
Paul Wynn?
4.
Unanimous.
Thank you. That is unanimous. Okay, there we go. That item's finished. We'll move on to the next item, which is.
Just for information, why is there a recorded vote?
Because for the last 12 months we've had to have recorded votes.
I think it avoids any kind of disagreements there online how the vote went. It's going to be recorded.
So it's recorded on most of them. Some we can not record anymore.
Can I just say,
To my discretion.
Miranda has taken, when it's clear that members are going to vote unanimously,
Yeah,
she has
I just
taken
said,
that.
to my discretion whether we have a thing. Because there might be one or two later
I'm
on.
not telling you, I know you know.
Right, okay, we'll move on to item 6.
Thank you.
Okay, everybody ready? We'll just let the room, hang on. So, item 6, Paddock Lodge, Kinley Road, Kinley. And Mark, is you again?
It is.
Busy boy.
Thank you, Chair.
Hopefully it's a bit easier.
Submitted application seeks retrospective consent for the retention of a steel frame building which is used for general storage and is within the residential curtilage of Paddock Lodge. Paddock Lodge is a large 2-storey dwelling which has been extensively extended over the years, and the property has a sizable curtilage of around 1.4 acres. The building sits adjacent to the northwestern boundary of the dwelling and is well set back within the site. The land at the rear of the building drops away to a public footpath which runs along the edge of the southern boundary. In between the building and the footpath there is mature tree planting. There is also extensive planting to the front of the site and along the edge of the driveway, which helps screen the building from the road. To the west of Paddock Lodge there is a holiday lodge development which consists of 4 lodges. These are owned by the applicant for the storage building, and these were granted planning permission on appeal back in 2013. The building is used for general storage by the applicant, storing equipment, tools and small machinery that is used for maintenance of the house and its grounds. The building itself measures 12 metres by 8 metres in footprint, with a height of 4 metres to its eaves and 5.1 metres to its ridge. The building is clad in a dark green steel profile sheeting, that you can see there, and the rear of the back building is supported on stone gabions due to the way the land slopes downwards, which you can just make out on that picture, previous picture. There. The building sits within the curtilage of the dwelling and it is well screened by existing vegetation. Officers consider that there is no visual harm caused, and it is recommended for approval subject to condition to control its use and ensure that it remains incidental to the use of Paddock Lodge and not used for any business or commercial uses rented or sold off separately from the main dwelling. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mark. We have one speaker, which is the local member, which is Councillor Vince Hunt.
Thank you, Chair. I don't think it's going to come as any surprise to anybody that I have severe reservations about this particular building and about the property in general. As Mark has stated, they came for planning permission for holiday lodges in 2013 or 2012. That was turned down by the council. They took it to appeal, and the inspector disagreed with the council and gave permission for 4 lodges to be put in there, feeling that was sufficient so that it wouldn't do particular harm to the surrounding countryside and to the, in particular, Ivy Cottage, which is a Grade 2 listed building. The applicant then proceeded to put 7 lodges in, and through COVID, I had to contact West Mercia Police a couple of times because I was getting complaints of lockdown breakdowns, parties being held there, people using not just the buildings that were lawful, but the ones that were not there, that shouldn't have been there. It's been the bane of the lives of the residents that are there. Now, obviously I will be moving to the back of the room after this. I know that the building is there. Obviously we all do. It's yet another retrospective. The applicant went to appeal when the council turned down the extra 3 lodges which were lumped in with this building. That was refused. It was taken to appeal. That was refused. A stop notice was put on for July of last year for the use of those 3 lodges, and that was then subject to an enforcement order which was taken to appeal. That appeal was lost. The lodges are still there, so although we've just heard that there are 4 lodges, there are only legally 4 lodges there. There are still 3 there that shouldn't be there, which have not been moved. This building is not a small building. It would grace any small farm. Frankly, it's 12 metres long, 8 metres wide, and up to the east 5.1 metres. There's the picture of it. Now, if anybody here can tell me that a house with a 1.2 acre garden requires a building like that to keep their tools and their lawnmower in, I would like to hear it. I've got 4 acres at home and I've got nothing like that, and I get by quite adequately. I also understand that around the actual main house itself, there are a number of storage facilities where tools can be kept and lawnmowers can be kept. There's a double garage with the house where these things would be kept. I go past often. The cars are usually on the drive. I'd like to add to it as well that the main house, Paddock Lodge, was marketed for sale for over £1 million during the summer. I believe it came off in July. They stopped marketing it. At the time, they didn't get approval for the other bits. I'm not going to say where the owners were living, but the holiday lodges are quite nice because I can't prove that. My suspicion is that this will either end up, because this is an applicant who has willfully ignored planning rules. Everything's been done through the back door. The appeal on the stop notice was presented, but the main angst of the inspector and for the refusal was the extra 3 buildings. Nevertheless, this was part of that appeal and it was lost. So as far as I'm concerned, it shouldn't be there. It's too big. Obviously, as members, you can only focus on what's there. Should it be there? Is it necessary? If this was going to be a new build, I'm not entirely sure officers would be saying that it should be approved. If it wasn't there already, I don't think that would be the recommendation. I think the recommendation would be very different. I do urge members to think long and hard about this. In Shropshire, I think we're pretty good at planning most of the time. I don't think this building should be there. As I said, I don't think if this was going to be a new build, we would have the same recommendation on the table. I know officers are concerned about what the inspector might think, but if we're going to run all of our planning department and our committees on what we think the inspector thinks, then we may just as well delegate everything and stop at home and save the public travel money and our time. That's all I've got to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vince. Yeah, I'm going to come back to the officer before I have the floor. Okay, yeah.
I just want to add that photograph there shows the timber building is one of the unauthorised lodges that is supposed to be removed. So I don't want members thinking that that's another storage building alongside the one which is under discussion today, which is this one here.
It's unauthorised lodge.
Yes.
Mark, can I come to you before we go to the floor? Anything you want to say?
Not at the moment. I think we acknowledge there's been various enforcement issues with the holiday lodge park next door. Yes, it is owned by the applicant, but this building is obviously within the residential curtilage, so it is a separate planning unit, and it needs to be considered on its own merits on that basis.
Thank you. Just to clarify one point before I go to the floor. So when it was refused and it went to appeal, it was refused then. It's a different application because it hasn't got the lodges on in it. So it's a different application. Before, when it was refused, it was the lodges and the building. Now it's just the building, which is a bit confusing. So I just want to put now up to the floor. Yeah, Mark first, then Gary.
I never quite understood, Philip, what permitted development rights are. Obviously, I thought if something was built in your garden, you had permitted development rights. Not that I'm looking for an avenue to get out of this, I don't particularly like it. But it is, what does that mean, Philip? Or Mark?
Yes, you're quite right. It would there could be permitted development rights. However, I'm not sure what the height of the building is. Would it exceed?
5.1 metres.
How high?
Yeah, this exceeds the permitted development allowance.
Right.
So they need to bring the ridge line and the and the eaves down by, I think it's about 1.5 metres, I think, roughly, to make it permitted development.
Therefore, members would need to assess whether they think there's any visual harm of the building in the landscape setting. It is clearly within the curtilage of the dwelling. We drove past the site this morning. You saw the dwelling and where the building was. I just wanted to highlight the previous, as I've done to you with regards the unauthorised lodge alongside, which is subject to a separate enforcement procedure to have it removed. I also acknowledge, looking at this here now, the building itself is built on higher ground to what the lodge alongside is, and then the dwelling is the other side of the lodge, if I'm right. Opposite direction.
The dwelling is to the right of that picture.
Right.
And the lodge, is that still being lifted? That false bit at the bottom, that is the start of the lodge.
A void underneath.
Yeah, there's a void there.
You walk up into them.
Oh, right, so
The balcony and
elevated
and stuff.
Right. So, right, going on to Gary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm afraid I have to go against officers. I couldn't possibly approve this. We stopped there today and I disagree entirely with the officer's opinion that it's not visually detrimental. It's an industrial building, sat next to a lovely cottage, sat next to a holiday home that needs to be pulled down. But if it doesn't get pulled down, at least it's not visually impactful. This is an industrial storage unit, garage, call it what you like, with an easy access for trucks or other vehicles to use it in the future as an industrial unit of some sort. It's far out of keeping with even the illegal buildings they've put up. It's out of keeping with the cottage itself, and it's detrimental to the landscape. And it's above permitted development heights. So I recommend that we refuse it, Mr. Chairman.
Right. Okay, we have a proposal there, but we have Jeff.
Thank you. I also agree it's out of keeping, and I don't think the building should stay. And if we lose out and it does stay, we need controls to make sure it's not turned into residential or whatever. We need strict controls. But I would second the motion that it is out of keeping and we should reject the application. The guy is just playing the game.
Right, okay, we have Morgan. Nat?
Thank you, Chair. It's actually more of a question on curtilage, really. You see, if in the previous application this building was actually part of the other three buildings that they attempted to get through and failed, and I genuinely asking a question, can they then claim that it's curtilage to the building after they've done that?
Thank you, Alan.
I'm of the opinion here, I listened to what everybody's going to, listening to what everybody's going to say. I think one of the issues here, by what I can see, is the building's overall appearance. You do consider it as a visual impact. Therefore, I'm thinking visual impact is the height. What you need to weigh up as well, in my opinion, in considering this, is what would be allowed as PD there, because you can't go against that. It's in the curtilage. You may think, well, the building needs to be lowered. It's too high, and it needs permission, obviously, because of its height. However, it's not. Is it situated in front of the front building line of the dwelling or not?
Flip back to the aerial photo. I think it's
aerial photograph.
Yeah, the last slide.
Okay, you have a look at that, because if it's front of the front building line, well, then it needs permission. But if it isn't and it's to the side, the only reason it needs planning permission is because of its overall height.
Yeah, the star indicates the building concerned, and it is set behind the frontage of the house.
So it is behind the frontage. So therefore, if you drop the height of it, it would be PD.
Well, just go back on that, Chair. Is the frontage of the building the frontage nearest the highway or the frontage of its longest elevation?
Yeah, the frontage of the house as it faces the highway.
It's set back, if it's set back behind the front building line of the house, then it's away from the highway.
Just going back to Nat's question, was that answered?
No.
Thank you. So could you answer Nat's question?
Yeah, although planning permission was previously refused, I think there's a very clear sort of boundary treatment down that side. So on site it reads as being part of the dwelling's curtilage rather than the holiday.
Can you make that bigger, please? Can you make the thingy bigger?
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Philip, could you make that bigger, please? Slide. Okay.
Obviously, that picture was taken before the roof went on, was it?
No, can I, well, one thing I want to point out, there's a fence, if you notice, between the chalet and the building within the, what we're calling the curtilage. Well, I would say that would be the boundary of the curtilage, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
And there's also a hedge being planted there.
Yeah.
So I actually think the building is within the curtilage of the dwelling, and the chalet is outside, and that fence is a dividing line. However, what I can't quite understand, Mark, is it's on higher ground. It's looking, why is it, it's like the chalet's down here.
From the back of the house, the land slopes down towards where there's a public footpath that runs along just outside the southern.
And the other question I need to ask is, this when this photograph was taken, it wasn't finished then.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it is completed now.
So when was this? So he's gone and he's recently finished this. Then
yeah, it's all finished and it's all inside is kitted out.
That was after the appeal decision?
No, it was completed prior to the appeal decision.
Could we just go to the aerial photograph and just show us where the footpath is from out of interest, please?
Do you want to mouse, Mark? Oh, dear. Need a laptop each.
There's a footpath.
So the footpath kind of runs along this hedge down here and then to the side of these trees here.
Right. So there is an impact from the footpath?
It is, yeah, it is.
Right, okay. And that's the highest part of it as well?
Yeah, you're looking, on that footpath, you're looking up to the building.
Right, okay.
Sorry, can you tell me again where we parked this morning? Because I'm confused on the bit I'm looking at there.
Just
there.
Go on, how, sorry?
Full screen.
Go on, make it full screen, you see.
Double doors on the road.
It is full screen. Oh, I know, yeah, just to get rid of all these down here, then I've got control of the slides, so that's good.
Go to the tab slideshow.
Come and do it for us, you'll be quicker. I like the slide, the trouble is when you go in full screen, I haven't got the
Let's
slides.
try and see if we get full screen first.
Go from current slide, so the second one along. Mark,
Yeah. But then I lose the control of the ones on the side, don't I?
Yeah, I just wanted to see it because, right, the road where we parked this morning, where do we park?
Just there. So
There.
that's the driveway that runs.
And then we look down towards the building, okay?
Yeah.
So the highest part of the building is the back of it,
What do you mean
where the
traffic?
footpath is, yeah, okay.
What's that tractor factory?
That tractor factory is irrelevant. That appears to be a business located. I think it was Congleton or somewhere.
Oh,
So
okay.
yeah, I have looked into that because that confused me too.
Right, okay.
So which is the building then with the house?
Okay, so, right.
It's not a very
Jack.
new photograph, that is it, Mark?
I'd say that's pretty up to date.
Is the tennis court still there then?
Yeah,
Yes,
the tennis court's there.
I noticed that this morning, and it's clear looking at this now that it is behind the front building line of the dwelling. So my opinion on this is, for what it's worth, is you need to determine whether you think the building is too high.
Jeff?
Can I just ask about drainage? Does it incorporate drainage? And where it's got to have a lot of water coming off that roof. What have they done about drainage?
The drainage, they say, is, remember rightly, was going to soakways. I think the suggested conditions it is details of drainage.
There isn't drains at the moment, but it will go to main sewers or whatever.
It'll go to soakaway.
Soakaways, right, okay. I still object.
So with the development, there's no ground floor size we have to stick to.
Height-wise,
It's a ground, I'm just asking, you have to stick to a certain size, ground floor size for a community development.
Ground floor size, they could cover half their garden. 50% of the garden.
Okay.
Not the half the existing building.
There's no doubt about the floor area, it would be PD. You'll have observed as driving past this morning, there's a very large domestic curtilage here. And I just been looking at the screen now to establish has the curtilage been moved, but Mark tells me no, it hasn't. So where I pointed out on that previous photograph, that would be the boundary. The chalet is outside the domestic curtilage of the dwelling, which would make sense because you wouldn't want holidaymakers walking around in your own private garden, would you?
Okay, right. Mike.
He's playing the game, isn't he?
Thank you. All I can sort of see with this is that it's an agricultural building on a residential property. Its height is agricultural industrial. So therefore we can refuse it because it's outside of the permitted development boundaries. And I think that's all it boils down to. You know, all the other issues.
Taking advice from planning officers, the only concern that we could have is the height of the building.
Yeah, I'm happy to amend my proposal to suit that. That we recommend refusal on the grounds it's too high.
Lawfully, they could do it if it was a lower building.
Yeah.
What is the height of, what is permitted?
4 metres high within 2 metres of the boundary, so.
Can I ask one more question on that, if you don't mind, sorry?
It's not 2 metres side,
The fact they've built up the land,
4 metres, right.
because it's sloping land, so where is the actual height taken from? From the ground floor of the existing building, or from the mean height of the land?
Whoa.
I think it's from the natural ground level, so I think.
But he's built up to the ground level, hasn't he?
From the front, that's ground level in his driveway.
So it's still top, it's still saying it's 5.1 though.
Right, there's a thought, minor thought in there about deferring it to go back to him because he was straight to appeal because he's that sort of character, and say that building's too high, drop it, and see what comes back. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
And at the same time, remove the 3 holiday lots, look there, let it, you haven't got vision.
Same time, so it all gets mixed in.
What I'm concerned about is he could reduce the height of it, and then it would conform with PD.
Yeah.
So I don't see the point in going to appeal because he'll probably go and do that before he goes to appeal.
Hang on.
I'm quite happy. I hear what you're saying about the height of the building, and that's up to you to make that judgment. But I'm just advising there is permitted development rights here, and where it's a difficult situation is this dwelling does seem to have a very generous residential curtilage.
Can I just check something? Mark, you just said a minute ago that 2 metres from the boundary. Where's the boundary? Is the boundary that wooden fence between the chalets and the property? Because if it is, it's closer to 2 metres, isn't it?
Yeah, you can go up to 4 metres high where it is within 2 metres of the boundary. So yeah, that boundary was that wire mesh fence.
Right, okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, that building's very much a kept sort of building. It's obviously made in a factory and dumped on site, isn't it? It's not particularly great quality. A good wind will probably knock it down, like. I can't see him taking it down a foot or two. It's made to that size that he's either going to take it down and buy a new one or not bother. I mean, I'm not very keen on this, but I'm not sure what we can do about it. I mean, I'd like to refuse it. How much does an appeal cost, Philip?
If it was written reps, which I think this would almost certainly be, I'm quite. It's a house.
Household if it's in the residential curve.
It would be a household appeal. It wouldn't cost much, and I'm of the opinion, looking at it now and assessing everything, and I want to go back to the photograph with the curtilage. Right, it's up against the boundary there. It's also high with its height. I think you could, if you are mindful and you wish to, refuse it on the height of it as industrial looking in a residential curtilage.
That's what I said.
Go with that.
So, well, let me propose that again. So, refusal on the grounds that it's an industrial style building, too high for permitted development and too close to the curtilage.
Absolutely.
And I'll second that.
Fine. Right,
have you had their say? Yeah. Okay, we don't vote for the recording on this one.
I think it's going to be unanimous.
I don't know. We've got to do recording.
Do a quick show of them. Yes or no?
We have a proposal which has been seconded to refuse planning permission, not in accordance with the officer's recommendation. Please can you confirm whether you are for or against the proposal?
Against recommendation.
So you're for the proposal.
For the proposal.
Thank you.
Gary,
For the proposal. That's
Yeah,
proposed.
sorry.
Jeff Harmer,
That's why.
For the proposal.
Ted,
For.
Mark Jones,
For the proposal.
Mike Isherwood,
For.
Edward Towers,
For.
Nat Green.
For.
Unanimous.
Vote for. Okay. Yes. Wow. Okay, we'll get to the difficult ones now. Item 7,
Hang on,
which is
Councillor Hunt rejoins
the
the room.
roundabout junction A49 Tarpley Road near the church. Bill, if you,
Yes, yeah.
yeah,
It can only get, things can only get better.
it might do.
Okay.
Right, thank you, Mr. Chair. Uh, Right, application is for erection and display of 3 sponsorship signs to be placed in the A49 Tarpley Road roundabout and 4 signs in the A49, A41 Chester Road roundabout at Whitchurch. There are no updates on this application. The 2 roundabouts in question are here, one there and the other one here. One here. Now comes a mock-up of what the sign will look like in the next slide after this one. There we go. That's the size. The size specifications are as set out in paragraph 1.1 of the officer's report. They'll be constructed from steel and aluminium with a powder coated finish and 1.2 meters wide by 0.55 meters tall. And there's the roundabouts closer up and photographs. Now I've lost them. Photographs of the site. Here we go. With the roundabouts in question. They're grassed over at the moment, as you can see. There is no landscaping on these 2, which has been a source of contention with previous applications.
Okay.
It is no objections received to this application, and it is considered that there will be no adverse impact on public highway safety or on residential amenity. In conclusion, the officer's recommendation is one of approval, subject to conditions as outlined in Appendix 1 attached to the report. And that concludes my presentation on this, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Phil. I'm not sure whether we can do this, but I'm the only member from Whitchurch. They're all around Whitchurch. Can we take all 3 together?
I don't think it's been done like that before, Chair.
No, I think we need to run through each one.
Okay. Right, there's no opposition from Town Council, no objection from the public. I shall propose we go with the officer's recommendation. Second it. Any other comments? We'll do it by hand. All those in favour, please show. On the officer's recommendation. Right, next item, please. Item 8.
Again, a similar application. This is for erection and display of 5 sponsorship signs to be placed on the A41, A525 Tilstop Road roundabout and 3 signs on the A41 Heath Road, Priest Road roundabout. And members, just to be aware, these applications are brought to committee because they're council inspired and income generating with advertising, of course. Again, on this application, there are no updates. Location plan indicating the 2 roundabouts up on the screen now. Specifications are as per the previous one, same size. Again, mock-up of what it'll look like. Again, same as the previous one. Indication of the roundabouts, and finally some photographs. Again, no landscaping on.
That's a photograph.
Set photographs.
Same cost.
Roundabouts.
Same grips.
Again, no objections received to the application. It is also considered there will no adverse impact on public highway safety or residential amenity, and therefore, in conclusion, the officer's recommendation is one of approval, subject to conditions as outlined in Appendix 1, attached to the report. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. As I'm the only one who lives in that area, no objections. I shall propose we go with the officer's recommendation on this as well. Vinci seconding. Any other comments? Show of hands, all those in favour?
It's not your division.
Pardon?
It's not your division.
No, not on mine. Unanimous. Okay, we'll move on to the next one.
And finally, the final one. Again, a similar application for the erection and display of 4 sponsorship signs on this time on the A525 Ash Road, Shakespeare Way roundabout, and 3 signs on the A525 Nantwich Road, Way Mills roundabout, again in Whitchurch. No updates. Location plan indicating the 2 roundabouts. 1, 2. Mock-up sign, or what similar to the previous. These are roundabouts closer up, and photographs. Again, they've got no landscaping on; they've just grassed over. And so this is the second roundabout, second of the 2 roundabouts, again grassed over. No objections again to this application. And as for the previous, no adverse impacts considered by officers on public highway safety or on residential amenity. And therefore, in conclusion, the officer's recommendation is again one of approval, subject to conditions as outlined in Appendix 1, attached to the report. Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's my final comments on these
Thank
applications.
you very much, Philip. This isn't quite so close to me, but it's not far away. But just going back to when we do have an objection to roundabout, we've had one in Oswestry, we've had one in Shirehall. We do refuse them when there's good reason. But I will propose we go to officer's recommendation on this one as well for approval. So any other comments or not? We shall go Mark.
Yeah, I'd like to see whether we could put the name, not just the sponsor's name, but the name of the roundabout on these things as well. It'd be quite handy if you were coming up that roundabout and it said Shakespeare's roundabout on it, because you could turn left there into Whitchurch, or it would give you a direction. It'd be quite handy.
I've never known the Shakespeare roundabout. There you go.
Well, whatever it's called.
Yes.
I know we go to Leicester.
It's an Nantwich Road roundabout.
We go to Leicester regularly. There's a big pork pie next to it. A building built by the pork pie. It's a pork pie roundabout, so you know you're on the right route.
I've never. I hear what you're saying. I've never heard that roundabout called that. But if you want to propose that, you could do.
Well, has it got a proper name? I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, I'd second that actually, because to be honest, it helps name things. Council have highways have, in the relatively recent past, put up signs to show entrances to this village or that village that I never knew exactly where the boundaries were before. And this is just another indication.
This is closer to Whitchurch, I must admit. This is on the edge.
Yeah, it is. And I know it quite well, obviously, like yourself.
Yeah.
So it would be quite an interesting thing for officers to look at.
Can we look at that, officers?
Well, just finish on the street first.
Yeah.
I do have limited experience of this, but what experience I've got is, for example, if you have Walker Cripps on there, quite often it would be known as the Walker Cripps roundabout. So they almost become self-naming with the name of the company that advertises on, which is the whole point since advertising on them.
I thought they were all called Walker Cripps.
Joyce, you could have salt and vinegar and
The signs that you have as you enter villages at the boundary are actually usually paid for by parish and town councils. They pay themselves for them. It's not Shropshire
That's the side of the road, yeah.
Yes, that's
a
good point.
I know you're coming from, you two.
In response, to be fair, we have a number of further applications for this type of garden. In fact, I didn't want to. There's some in the Shrewsbury area will be coming in, and I thought 3 were enough for this committee because they are a bit repetitive. However, it's something we'll bear in mind, and we'll need to speak to the applicants who are property services within the council, obviously. And there's another thing that we need to do as well. I think we need to liaise, because a number of the applications coming in the future will be in the Shrewsbury area, where some of the roundabouts may well have landscaping on. I'm aware of one where there's been contention because they've turfed the one who was paying to landscape the roundabout has been moved in favour of putting a sign up. So it's a balancing effect of the council using this as a source of revenue, and local communities or town councils getting sponsorship for landscaping on them. And I'm aware that's of a particular concern by what I've observed in the western part of Shrewsbury here. So it's something I'm going to suggest to the applicants that they liaise perhaps a little bit better, or do liaise rather, with parish councils and town councils before the applications come in.
Absolutely, because one was thrown out of a church.
Just to come back on Vince's point though, to going for Walker's Cliffs roundabout, what have you, the whole point of advertising was that might change in time, that a different advertiser comes along, different price and also.
But it was never changed from the first one that was there.
The name stays if it's given the name of the roundabout. That's it.
Right, yeah. That one, I mean, Tarpey roundabout, it's Tarpey roundabout. Nantwich roundabout, which is local knowledge, that's what they get. But in future, I suggest, if you're happy with it, we look at it. Yeah.
New roundabouts particularly.
Yeah. New roundabouts particularly. Right. You happy with that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So.
You divorce.
Yeah, we're happy with that. So in future, can you go there?
Yeah, are they approving this or what?
Alan, we're getting to it now. So,
We've done all that.
do we have a second by that?
We decided this one. No, the other two are fine.
So, right, we'll show of hands again. All those in favour, please show. Sorry, Nat, you're just on the corner there. All, yeah. That's unanimous. Thank you very much. Right, item 10, appeals and appeal decisions. Any comments from planning officers? I think it's quite successful. There's only one.
Yes, all I can say is there's a number of appeals there. We've got a number of appeals in the system at the moment. I was only observing them last night. Officers are busy with appeals. However, I believe there's 10 years there, 10 dismissed and only 1 allowed.
So like an England football score,
so
isn't it? 10-1.
Officers are clearly getting something right.
Choice.
How many planning applications go to appeal that are refused, or do people just automatically do it now?
No, I wouldn't say so. You probably observed. We are processing applications now, putting them through our hands quicker, and in line with our new assistant director's objectives, and therefore we are refusing more at the moment, and that's obviously resulting in a higher number of appeals.
Yeah, makes sense.
Do we need to publicise this fact, Philip, that what we're doing, and then people wouldn't appeal so much? Because it all takes time, doesn't it? And money. And money. And have any of those that have gone to appeal come through here? Is there anything better that we can do to streamline the system? Obviously, it's been great that you've streamlined it a lot quicker. I think that's out no end, and people are not so frustrated to have a decision, and then they can make their mind up whether they appeal or not. I think that's helped a lot.
If you look in the list of the decisions, it should say whether it's been allowed at committee or not, shouldn't it?
Yes, it says delegated.
Yeah, they're all delegated. Well, that's it. What more can I say? All delegated.
This month's unusual, isn't it?
Sorry?
I said this month's unusual.
Well.
Hey. Right, we're moving on to item 11. Date of next meeting. To be noted, the next meeting of the Northern Planning Committee will be held at 2 o'clock on Tuesday, the 8th of November 2002 in Shrewsbury Room, Shirehall.
Before we close the meeting, sorry, before we close the meeting, just an admin question.
Yeah.
The PowerPoint slides are great up there, but can we not have them shared on our laptops? Because it's almost impossible to see the detail of the pictures.